I will also say this. I know that we have many lodge treasurers who are on this call, as we did in the last session, last program. We had many accountants, and there are a lot of different ways of managing a lodge. There's certain basics of fundamentals that were really what we're talking about here. Little differences, nuances are fine, but there's a basic proper protocol that must be followed. And once again, it's for everyone's safety. You follow those, there's never an issue down the road. And once again, sadly, every now and then there are. And once again, it's a rarity in the craft, and that's a blessing. That represents who we are. But we follow these procedures to ensure that no lodge wakes up one morning and their bank accounts are withdrawn. And we've had those over the decades. And so that's why we've come up with these protocols to follow. At this time, I would like to call my dear brother, Right Worshipful Brother Ron Seifried, DSA. Worshipful Brother Ron, I want everyone to know, is actually an author. We're actually going to have a program in the coming months with Brother Ron, who's actually going to speak about his book. But Brother Ron, as I said, the birthday boy, is the trustee of Jephtha Lodge number 494 in the Suffolk Masonic District. And Brother Ron, the floor is yours.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brothers, for coming out tonight. I just want to give you a little background. I'm past master of Jephtha Lodge 494 in Huntington, New York. I've been chairman of the trustees now for about 5 years, and a trustee for another year before that. I want to tap on to what Rocco said. One of the most important things I discovered being a trustee for Jephtha was the transition process, which what we developed here at Jephtha is a plan to properly transition to future trustees. You know, we're all just temporary custodians of our building, and we should be aware of that, and we should not, you know, keep all the secret passwords like we do in a lodge room to adjust ourselves and not share it with other important elected officers. The trustees are custodians of its most important assets: the building, the furnishing, the records, and they take legal ownership of the building by a vote of the brothers at a summit communication. The trustees wear many different hats, including property managers, landlords, contractors, handymen, financial advisors, custodians, archivists, and much, much more. It's not a glamorous position, but these important, sometimes unseen brothers ensure the lights stay on, the water is running, and the leaks are plugged. We might not attend every state of communication. Well, not attend any state of communication. I think I'm the only trustee who actually goes to most, actually myself and another brother go to most communications. We're too busy on these off days, middle of the night. We address problems that might happen. Heat breaks down, roof's leaking. So our Masonic hours are kind of tapped out during the day or during the week. The trustee requirements, you need to elect a well-qualified brother. It's critical to ensure an effective property management occurs in all aspects of the building management. It's imperative the right brothers are elected or assigned the trustee position, and they must interface with all lodge members and concordant bodies. A brother must be a master mason in good standing of that lodge. He must be a resident of New York State. He must demonstrate effective communication skills, problem-solving skills, receive support from the other brothers in carrying out the property management tasks, attends required training and committee meetings, and has the basic accounting organizational skills. The training part of a trustee, which most lodges don't actually cover, I found. I'll do a quick plug of my book. I wrote the book Long Island Freemasons, quick plug, which I was fortunate enough to visit about 20 different lodges on Long Island and Nassau and the Suffolk Masonic districts. And I learned quite a bit how other lodges run their, especially the trustee part of the business, the actual building management. And I was fascinated really how they, some lodges did have a training system, some actually did not have training systems, and I was surprised. So when I came in, I was shown the ropes, I was shown X, Y, and Z, but I wasn't really trained thoroughly on what each part of the building encompassed. So with a trustee's position, you have to really know in detail different areas. Our lodge has about 28, 29 different areas that we are constantly managing. We have a 3-story commercial building in downtown Huntington with 2 first floor retail businesses. That is our rental income. We're very fortunate. But we still have to manage the building, which is a 110-year-old building. It is falling apart, as most 100-year-old buildings are. Our lodge, we have to address the kitchen area, the fire suppression system, the bar area, fire escape guidelines, climate control management, heating system maintenance, central AC maintenance, a security system overview, key fob system, regular cleaning supply updates, Wi-Fi network management, historical archive preservation, liability insurance overview, disabled motorized chair, and of course, on-site state and federal inspections. So it can be very complicated to run a lodge building. The property, what you are really as a trustee, is really a property manager or a landlord of that building. There is much more than what your brother Rocco did mention, that there's a very close relationship between the trustee and the treasurer, and that is true, as is with the secretary and the master. But the trustees are kind of left their own devices in many ways to really fix the repairs, plug the holes, and plan future projects, which can get very complicated. And you need to have a well laid out plan before you move forward with any major repairs. It's a physical process that should be supported by all brothers and concordant bodies. Effective management of the equipment and materials throughout the life cycle help ensure that the lodge activities are performed in accordance with the policies and procedures of the building. If not, if things break down and you don't maintain them properly, you're gonna have a problem in your hands. And this goes from, toilets to sinks to roof repairs, heating systems, and whatnot. And it can get very complicated depending how large your building is. The trustees are also retain the record system, which, yes, the treasurer is the main manages the financial systems. It does go back to the property of the trustees, including all financial transactions and the balance of the lodge. The treasurer does manage the accounts for possibly the bank accounts, the capital improvement funds, endowment, but the trustees have their own database as well. Actually, our trustees do, including historical archives, furnishing, and equipment. There are 4 important documents that a trustee must retain in a digital and hard copy format, and you must transition those documents over to their successors. And those are the property deed of the building, the tax map, the real estate tax invoice, and any certificate of occupancies. Now, if you don't have these documents, you can easily obtain them from your local town or county clerk office. I suggest every brother out there, if you don't know where they are, you should get them and definitely make digital scans of them. Also, word of warning on a certificate, on a CO, you might have more than one. Most lodge buildings should have at least one. Our lodge has 6. Did not know that until I went to the town hall. Other documents that you must regularly update are permits. The fire marshal comes on site on an annual basis. He will give you a list of problems in the building that you must address. A couple of years ago, we had a new stove put in. We had to put a fire hood in there, an ancillary system. So we had to scramble and put that in there because we had a violation of the fire permit. The trustees retain hard and digital copies of everything, including these permits, and they transfer these documents to their successors. Other regular permits, conductor permits, might include fire extinguishers, the ancillary system, industrial boiler, gas, water backflow, and liability insurance. Speaking about liability insurance, if your lodge is required or should have liability insurance policy on their building, and the trustees are responsible to negotiate that insurance policy. I suggest all trustees on this call and in future recordings of this tape should renegotiate their insurance policies at least once every 2 years minimum. We did that a couple of years ago, and we saved about $6,000 per year. That's a lot of money for a Masonic lodge. Each member of the Masonic lodge has a general obligation to safeguard and make appropriate use of the lodge and the equipment. And each section of the lodge is maintained by a team, essentially. The junior warden, who is the elected officer, maintains the kitchen and possibly the bar area. We have a separate bar committee that maintains the bar area that works closely in conjunction with the junior warden in the kitchen. Those two brothers or teams will report back to the trustee for any problems, any physical or mechanical problems in their areas, and the trustees will address them as quickly as possible. The trustees do provide guidance and training to all the brothers and concordant bodies on all the property-related issues, from pre-purchase considerations through the retirement of any assets. The lodge areas should contact the trustees with assistance for any issues immediately. Do not let it lag. And it's difficult for a trustee to know what's going on in the building if they're not in that section of the building. You might think the trustees come in every day or every other day to check the pipes, check the water. No, the trustee's job is sometimes actually mostly reactive, not proactive. Proactive will happen down the road, but reactive because a leak might happen tomorrow, or the toilet might get clogged, or a pipe might burst. The scary part during the early days of the lockdown in my lodge, the hot water heater broke down, flooded the entire kitchen. Luckily, prior trustees put a floor in place, an epoxy floor with a drain system that went out the building. But we would never have known that because we were forbidden to go to, actually, well, there's a Grand Lodge edict not to go to your lodge. We didn't check in the building. Fortunately, we had a first floor tenant that notified us that there was water coming out of the building. We came in, addressed it, and it was minimal damage. So, and this was during the lockdown. Each trustee has a chairman. It's elected annually. And this chairman is empowered to call a meeting of the Board of Trustees. Mandatory quarterly meetings should be scheduled at the start of the Masonic year. The Worshipful Master, Secretary, and Treasurer should be invited to all these meetings, but they don't have voting rights. Our lodge is 5 trustees, so at least a minimum of 3 trustees must agree on any proposed project. If not, we don't move forward the project. We're very fortunate because our trustees do get along very well. So at the start of a Masonic year, the trustees must prepare a projected annual budget. This budget is arranged closely, set up closely with the lodge treasurer, and if you have a lodge finance committee. We have 2 co-chairmen of the finance committee. We have 1 treasurer. We sit down together the last few months of Zoom meetings, and we have a projected annual budget. Since we have a regular income with our 2 first floor retail spaces, we earmark about 20% of that rental income toward any capital improvement projects. That 20% can be eaten up very quickly. This year is our first year. Miraculously, we actually have a surplus moving on to next year, which our fiscal year ends on November 30th.
My brother, can I just ask you to slow down a little bit just for this reason? Could you touch upon, there's some brothers that are sending me messages regarding the responsibilities of you as a trustee solely for a lodge. There are a lot of brothers that are, I don't want you to neglect getting back to the responsibilities, which are immense, of a trustee that owns, of a lodge that owns a building. Those are the awesome tasks. But there's some brothers that are feeling that we want to know what are some of the responsibilities that you would do, even if you were a renter and you don't own a lodge. What sort of responsibilities are you doing as trustee?
That's an excellent question. The responsibilities of trustees that do not own the building and they're paying rent, well, they're negotiating the lease agreements between their lodge with the rental, with the owner of the property. That lease should be renegotiated on an annual basis. Obviously, they probably require security deposits. The trustees are in possession of all the lodge artifacts and officers' jewels and Masonic paraphernalia, any furnishing you bring into the building. So that's what a rental lodge would retain. They have to have a close relationship with the owners of the landlord to. Sorry, I got a little train of thought. To make sure that there's a good relationship between the landlord and the tenants. And if any problems arise, if there's like a leak or any problems arise with equipment that the renter lodge has, they must report it back to the landlord immediately. And also they should have their own liability insurance and negotiate that on their own on at least a biannual basis, and have that available.
Do you recommend, these are once again questions that are coming to me sometimes privately, do you recommend that every lodge, what's your thoughts on this, that every lodge renting from another building, presumably another lodge building, have a lease or a month-to-month basis, or what are your thoughts?
Depends on lodge circumstance. It really is. I mean, I believe most lodges here on Long Island that rent from other lodge buildings or other buildings, they have at least a 1-year lease in place. which gives them more flexibility to renegotiate on an annual basis. If you can't do that, you have to do month to month. That's fine.
I would even just comment, I would say that, we've all been renters in our personal lives, and sometimes a lease, your staying is going longer than your lease, and you become a month-to-month tenancy. But there are dangers to that, and the dangers are that you may get told that you can't stay. And so, of course, the lease gives you certain safeguards, protections. Yes. You have everything on paper, what your rights and duties are, as well as responsibilities and whatever, as well as for the landlord. So, but I mean, presumably you're not getting booted out from another Masonic lodge, but nevertheless, the lease is your guarantee. You know exactly what you're going to get. So it's always safer to have.
I also suggest any trustees that draw up leases have a attorney, preferably a lodge attorney, with property management experience to review that lease or even draw up that lease. The more attorneys, the better in your circumstances. Our lodge is very fortunate.
Who signs leases and who signs contracts? I've heard this question before, and actually this was a question that was just posed right now. Are they the officers of the lodge? Should a master ever sign it, or
the trustees sign the lease? The trustees should be signing the lease.
And contracts? And contracts?
And contracts, yes. The trustees should be signing the lease and contracts. A lodge attorney or attorney is the notary, or a notary, separate notary, but at least one, maybe the chairman or possibly a quorum of trustees, depending how your lodge is set up, should sign these leases and documents. Because they're the owners of the building, they're the owners of the property, and they're the owners, the temporary custodians of the artifacts and paraphernalia.
Right. So even if you're not talking about a lodge that owns this building, ultimately it's the trustee's responsibility, and that's their domain. So even if it's just a lodge that rents, that ultimately it would be a trustee that would sign that lease agreement and not the master of a lodge, correct?
Yes, correct. I also want to add the master of a lodge is only there usually for a 1-year term. Trustees are there for probably a 3-year term. And usually they don't interact the same time period. I'm not sure if upstate lodges are the same or operate the same way. I know downstate we have 5 trustees. They're each elected at 3-year terms, but they don't get replaced at the same time. They're overlapping each other over a several-year period.
A brother just commented that apparently at the Grand Lodge building, the master or secretary signs the leases. I guess we'll have to talk to them.
That must be different. Yeah. That's news to me. That's news to me. I thought well, they have 2-year terms. Well, 2 consecutive 1-year terms. So it might be different down there.
No. We're not talking about the Grand Lodge officers. We're talking about just brothers, lodges that meet at the Grand Lodge building when someone happened to comment. But ultimately, I mean, it's better practice probably to have the trustees, because that really is their under their domain. Correct?
Correct. So I just covered the projected annual budget. So the trustees shall provide the annual budget at the beginning of the Masonic year. We work with the treasurer and the finance committee very closely. We do talk to it on a regular basis via email, which I'll cover in a couple of minutes. At the end of the Masonic year, which is usually the summer communication in the spring, the trustees must prepare a committee report. They have the oversight of the books, accounts, vouchers of the secretary and treasurer, and they report the condition of the finances whenever required by the lodge and the master. A very detailed trustee report should be read in the lodge as stated communication and voted on at a summon communication and spread across the minutes. And every brother should have the time to have access to that report. Every master mason of that lodge should have time to review that report and have any questions at the next meeting, any concerns about finances and what was done in the building.
Brother Ron, whose budget is it? Is this the trustee's budget? Is the master's budget? Are you working with the master if he has his own pet projects and wants to move forward?
The master has his own project. The trustees, our trustees maintain the building itself. So we repair the building. We have the upkeep of the building. The treasurer does handle the bills. It's a much easier system. He does handle the monthly bills, but we handle the maintenance of the actual building itself.
What does that mean? Handle the maintenance? Who's actually paying the bills?
Oh, the treasurer is. So it goes back to the voucher system Brother Rocco discussed. So if we have a bill of, let's say, $1,000 for central AC work, an emergency repair, let's say, we contact the master, secretary, and treasurer immediately within 24 hours saying this must be done. We have a contractor coming in with an estimate. He needs to be paid net 30, let's say, net 30 days. The work is done and the trustees receive that electronic copy or hard copy of the invoice. He sends that invoice over to the treasurer and secretary and the master. The secretary creates the voucher, the master signs that voucher, and the treasurer writes the check out.
Thank you.
Okay. For rental management, like I said before, the trustees produce the rental contracts on the various parts of the building, either for private parties or if you have a regular or church or religious service coming in on a regular basis. That's also very helpful. So our lodge created three new programs the last couple of years, because what we noticed was the transition was uneven, going from one group of trustees to the other. And this happened probably for decades. And I was a little surprised at that. So one position we created unofficially is called the junior trustee. The junior trustee is which is voted on unanimously internally by the trustees, not in the state of communication. The 5 trustees must agree on a junior trustee. It's a master mason of the lodge in good standing. He's voted on an annual basis by the trustees. The position is a non-voting board member that's designed to familiarize a future leader of the lodge in maintaining the building, assisting the trustees when needed, and exchange of ideas for future project. The lodge can be very confident that when a new trustee position is available, the junior trustee is already familiar with the building management and requirements of the lodge. So this is a very important position. We had 3 junior trustees already. 2 of them have already become trustees of the building. 1 is probably will become a trustee within a year. I can't even stress how very important that position is, because trustees or even lodge treasurers or secretaries, when they, as Brother Rocco mentioned before, when they get into their chair, their position, they really have zero training. They have no idea what's going on. You have to discover passwords. You have to discover where the books are, where the bills are being sent. You really are walking in blindly, and that can't happen. So that's why we created the position of the junior trustee.
If I could just add, an overall point that to both Brother Rocco's and Brother Ron's presentations. Right when new officers come in, I really must stress that immediately that you have to get the old officers off of the books, off of the the bank statements, the check writing capabilities, the accounts, and get the new officers on there. It's a disaster when you let it go on and it just doesn't get done properly.
I would also stress to have at least one trustee on the bank accounts, and of course the treasurer. At least one, because God forbid something happens to one or the other, where's the lodge going to be? Don't have one brother on the bank accounts. That's a disaster waiting to happen. If that brother passes away, it could be weeks and not months before you get access to that account again. Another thing that our trustees have developed, and it's a living, breathing document that'll be growing in different aspects the next months and years, is a operations manual. It's the operations or building owner's manual is a maintenance manual and contains information required for the operation and maintenance of the actual building. The manual includes rules and regulations of operating the building, copies of important documents, and a building maintenance list appendix with a very detailed history of specific areas of the lodge, rooms, or parts of the building. So, and that manual is now kept at the secretary's desk. So if anybody is curious when that stove was replaced, or when we fixed a gas leak in the basement, or patched the hole in the roof, they'll look in that manual. They'll go to the page for the kitchen, let's say, or the roof, because they have all their own pages, and there's a detailed history with possibly pricing of the project, what the project cost at the time, and the date, or the rough date of when this project occurred. I can't stress how important it is for every lodge building. Brothers who own a lodge has a maintenance manual. And for lodges who actually rent from other buildings, they should have one as well. So they have upkeep of what the history of their time is in that building. If you're renting from an Elks Lodge or a Knights of Columbus building or a Polish Hall, you should definitely keep a maintenance manual on site with the secretary's desk in case you need to address some issues that might have taken place in your actual lodge room.
Brother Ron, can I ask you a question that was posed by a brother? He thought that the notion of a chairman of the trustees was interesting. How does that work with respect to the spreading of the responsibilities for specific tasks? And would you, as the chairman, be responsible for signing the contracts, leases, and things of that nature?
It's an equal position with the other trustees. In my opinion, the chairman is, I don't want to say like a secretary, but he is he calls the meetings, he directs the projects. Yes, it's probably easier to have the chairman sign the lease. He doesn't have to though. He's on the level with the other trustees essentially in terms of responsibility. He just really maintains order within the trustees and maintains regular communication between the trustee groups. It's not like a president of a club. It's not like that at all. That's the way I don't see it as. Our trustees, the five of us, and the junior trustee to a lesser extent, we are on equal footing, because we exchange ideas. We have a very good working relationship, which is extremely important. In the past, I've seen the lodges, our lodge, any lodge, the trustees are not getting along within their groups, and that would cause a lot of problems. So that's why we created the junior trustee position, to make sure we're kind of on the same page of where we want to see our building go.
Brother Ron, the question was asked earlier of Brother Rocco, and I touched upon it. What are your thoughts with respect to the bonding of officers?
We looked at it a long time ago, before my time. I know we didn't go for that because, as Brother Rocco said, it's fairly expensive. And we have a very good checks and balances system in our building, in our lodge. We're very, very, very fortunate, where we have a very tight relationship with the secretary and treasurer. As a matter of fact, our current treasurer has been in his chair, I think, 4 or 5 years. He has the past treasurer from 10 years ago as his advisor in every step of the way. And our lodge secretary is just, he took upon the responsibility and did a fantastic job. And we all have a very good symbiotic relationship. And of course, the master as well. Which brings me to my next point, or my next project we started, which is a very simple project, which every lodge can do. And that includes lodges who own their buildings and do not own their building. And that's a trustees monthly email communication. I was surprised that we didn't have a regular communication between all the officers, elected officers. In our case, as chairman, I prepared a monthly email and sent to all elected officers, including the secretary, the master, the treasurer, both wardens, because hopefully they'll be going east, and they should see what's going on in the nuts and bolts of the building and not be surprised the day they they get the bylaws and the charter at their installation and say, okay, here's what's going on with the building. They should be very well versed and prepared what that building is, what it takes to run that building. Even though the master is not there 24/7 to maintain the building, he needs to know what's going on, because he's very important in every step of the way for managing that building. Excuse me. This monthly email list includes a list of current, pending, and recently completed projects, a list of contractors and contact info, any and all budget updates, and a list of important dates to remember for the next 12 months, like lease renewals, upcoming permit inspections, and upcoming cleaning dates. These updates ensure transparency, feedback, and a very good transition between all the elected officers to manage a commercial building. And we actually do very well in terms of our communication. And I can't stress how important these 3 new items we created in the last few years have helped us. So this is basically, I don't want to, each section I discussed tonight can be easily expanded upon a very detailed talk and or article. I think there's plans to publish this outline tonight. I believe Russell Rubin will be taking care of that later. But in the future, we do plan to actually expand upon each section, especially the 3 new areas we created, which is the maintenance manual, the monthly email communication, and of course the junior trustee position, which we kind of pattern off Grand Lodge's creation of a junior steward or a junior master of ceremony. Those chairs. We said, well, why can't the trustees do that as well? That's what we do, because we're not here forever. We're just temporary, custodians.
Brother Ron, let me just ask you one last question. I'm going to ask you to just make this the last question so we can get to our next speaker, who's going to be very brief, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Yep.
The notion, the way you're talking about being the trustee, it makes it seem like as if you and the trustees have the free will of running the lodge, and that all the spending is the votes of the trustees. Would you just speak to that, so that
Good question.
The right answer is given with respect to who is voting upon the spending that the lodge is doing, whether it's in the trustees or the worship master?
The lodge votes on the projected budget at the beginning of the year, for whatever that budget might be. The trustees don't have free reign to spend whatever we want on that building. We can't go in and say we're going to recarpet the collation room without letting the brothers know. We don't do that.
It's not letting the brothers know. It's a question of the brothers have to vote upon that line item in order to approve it.
Correct. But if it was an emergency repair, like the hot water heater broke down during the virus, obviously we had to address that. We couldn't vote in the city communication. We had to address it immediately. We did our best, and we actually ran in and replaced the hot water heater almost immediately. That we couldn't vote on in a state of communication, and we shouldn't be expected to at all, because it's a required repair. If it's a not required update, we go to lodge and say, this is what we're proposing for a possible project in the future, in this current Masonic year, $5,000 for whatever the project might be, and the lodge brothers should vote on that in a state of communication.
To continue Ron's point, Brother Ron's point, everyone, every officer, the worship master, the trustees, everyone has a duty to ensure that the viability of the lodge. So if all of a sudden there was a fire or there's a water leak, the worship master, the trustees would be empowered to find someone and be permitted and authorized to pay them for that emergency situation, so for the viability of the lodge. So that is a separate issue than the regular expenditures that are required, and that required with a vote for a budget. And so I don't want brothers to mix those two. Obviously, correct. If there's an emergency situation here, there's a flood, the worship master, the trustees are empowered to call up a plumber and make sure a plumber is going to get paid when he comes there to the building, even if it's not in the budget. I also want to add,
Ruben, that at the next city communication, the trustees, usually the chairman, will announce that repair in detail with the final bill spread across the minutes at that meeting for any questions the brothers may have at that next meeting. We do not hold that information back. We're very transparent with that.
Of course. And so that's really the point, is that everything, it goes before the lodge. Everything that's of a non-emergency basis must go before the lodge for a vote, either in the budget. Once it gets voted upon in the budget, then everyone is empowered to spend according to the budget. It's only during the year, if you have additional expenditures that are required that are outside the budget, an additional vote would have to take place for those. But for these emergency situations here, as Worship Brother Ron indicated, that even if there was an emergency, once that emergency situation is addressed, then that bill is brought before the lodge, so the lodge can vote upon and be aware of it. Correct. Brother Ron, thank you so very much on your birthday. Happy birthday, brother.
My pleasure.
It was fantastic. I can't wait to get you back and we can talk more about your book. And I still need to get my copy of my book, you know.
I believe this is your copy.
Yeah, okay.
On sale now at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. All proceeds go to charity. Thank you very much.
What's it called? What's it called?
Long Island Freemasons. It's one of the Arcadia Images of America books. It's a history of a pictorial history of Long Island lodges. It includes a color section. And it goes back to 1797 to present, to current artifacts, believe it or not, that we discovered very, very recently, thanks to the research of the book.
I'm very excited that we're going to continue these monthly programs for lodges and buildings, education, the dry stuff, but we're also going to start having some much more, fun and juicier, presentations, including Worship Brother Ron's talk on his book. And we're going to start tapping into brothers from all over the state so they can talk about the history of their lodges, of their regions. So I'm really looking forward to that very much. Thank you very much, Worship Brother Ron.